Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. I welcome you all to today's webinar of Indian polity and governance. Good evening, everyone. We'll wait for a couple of minutes. Let everyone join in and then we will begin the class. Thank you so much. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Aditya is asking agenda for the day. Aditya, agenda is to have a good time in the next couple of hours. You get to know a bit about me, I get to know a bit about you. That's the only agenda. Nothing more, nothing less. Thank you, Ashok. Good evening, everyone. So, as you know, this webinar was originally supposed to happen on Tuesday. It was scheduled on the 12th of December. It has been rescheduled now. I'm feeling slightly better as compared to what I was on Tuesday, because of which we had to reschedule this. As you know, starting from this month of December, we have remodeled how the webinars happen. So, just a clarification, till the last month, the webinars that we used to have were on Tuesdays and on Thursdays. Tuesday webinars were mainly focused on prelims exam point of view, just discussing weekly current affairs from all the subjects. And the Thursday webinars are mainly from the mains exam point of view. Now, what we have done is the webinars will now be subject specific depending upon specific weeks. So, this week for English, it is for Indian polity and governance. So, whatever we will be discussing are the topics that were in the news from the subject of Indian polity and governance from both the prelims as well as the mains examination point of view. This is what we'll be discussing. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. These are the topics that we will be discussing today. So, a total of 8 topics that we have taken up. The first topic, Jammu and Kashmir, a lot in the news for a couple of reasons. What happened with respect to Jammu and Kashmir in the parliament? First, the Parliament of India passed the bill that decided, finalize how many seats will there be in the Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. Then also, we had the Supreme Court giving the landmark judgment on Article 370. As you know, ever since Article 370 was abrogated in August 2019, there have been multiple petitions filed and pending in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had to decide whether the government was right in abrogating Article 370. So we'll be discussing both of these issues. First, what happened in the parliament, and second, what happened in the Supreme Court. What did the Supreme Court say? The second topic that we'll be discussing is the ethics versus the privilege committee debate. That is again an ongoing debate. As you know, the ethics committee gave a report recommending the suspension of the member of the Lok Sabha, Mahua Moitra. She has been removed now. She has had to leave her post from the Lok Sabha on the basis of what the ethics committee said. We'll be discussing what that is. Then the legislative powers of the governor have also been a lot in the news for different states, especially Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Punjab. There are examples now of states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu that have gone to the Supreme Court against their own governor. So it's a unique case of the state government filing a case in the Supreme Court against their own governor, because according to them, the governor is holding up the bills of the state for a long time. So what did the Supreme Court say? What is the Supreme Court's view about the governor's power? Can the governor hold up a bill or not? Does the governor has to sign on the bill? We'll be discussing all these issues. Then the idea of all India judicial service. The President of India, Srimati Draupadi Murmu, in her speech on 26th of November on the Constitution Day, said that we should go ahead with all India judicial service. Now, this is not the first time someone in the high office has talked about all India judicial service. We'll be discussing what that idea is. Is this an idea that can remove all the ills of our judicial system? Is this an idea that can rectify judicial system going forward or not? Then the special category status for states, especially the demand coming in from Bihar. As you know, after the caste-based survey that Bihar had conducted, Bihar had been demanding from the central government that they should be given the status of special category state. Why? Because they want more help, more money from the side of the central government. We'll be discussing what that is. Is the demand justified or not? Similarly, there's a demand from Ladakh. Ever since Ladakh has become a union territory, we have seen that there are demands in Ladakh for inclusion in the sixth schedule of the Indian Constitution. We'll be discussing is there any development on that front. Then Supreme Court of India talked about Section 6A of the Citizenship Act. Recently, the Supreme Court asked the government, how has this section of the Citizenship Act impacted the residents of Assam? So we'll be discussing what that is. And in the end, the government of India, union government, has released numbers about over 21 lakh artisans have applied for the PM Vishwakarma scheme. So we'll be discussing what that scheme is, what is it that the government is trying to do about that scheme. So these are the topics that we have taken up for today's discussion. Without waiting any further, let's start with the first one. So the first topic that we have is about what has happened in case of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, again, there are two separate things that have taken place in the context of Jammu and Kashmir. For those who don't know, let me tell you what are those two separate things. First happened in the parliament. Now, as you know, in August of 2019, the status of Jammu and Kashmir was changed. Jammu and Kashmir was bifurcated into two parts, one part Ladakh, one part Jammu Kashmir, and both of them were recognized as union territories. Ever since that, although Jammu and Kashmir was given their own legislative assembly, since then we have not had any elections in Jammu and Kashmir. Why? Because the government said that we have to finalize the number of seats, we have to finalize other fine details about the reservation in Jammu and Kashmir Assembly, etc. Now, finally, the government of India, the parliament, has accepted the law under which new seats have been allocated to Jammu and Kashmir Assembly. So, first, in the parliament, basically the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly has been finalized. How many seats would it have? The reservation for SC and ST, etc. On the other hand, something happened in the Supreme Court as well, which is separate, no connection with what was happening in the parliament. In the Supreme Court, there were multiple petitions filed against the government's decision to abrogate Article 370. The Supreme Court had to decide whether the government had the power to do that, whether the President of India had the power to do that, or should the status of Jammu and Kashmir be restored? Should Article 370 be restored? That is what the Supreme Court had to decide. Supreme Court, what did they do? The Supreme Court supported the government. They said whatever the government of India did is right. They said Article 370 was always supposed to be a temporary provision, and the government was well within its rights to remove that going forward. And that is what has happened here as well. So let's start with what has happened at the parliament. First, let's discuss what happened at the parliament level, and then we'll go ahead and discuss what happened at the Supreme Court level. So at the parliament level, the Parliament of India passed a bill giving the final verdict or giving the final acceptance to how many seats will there be in the Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, as you know, Jammu and Kashmir before August 2019 looked something like this. The gray areas that you see here, this gray area is what you call as POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir, and this part, this gray area, is what you call as Aksai Chin, that is illegally occupied by China. The state of Jammu and Kashmir, the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir, was divided into two parts, Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir. Both of these separately are now union territories. The difference being in Ladakh, we don't have a constituent assembly. In Jammu and Kashmir, on the other hand, a constituent assembly was provided. Just like the Union Territory of Delhi, just like the Union Territory of Puducherry, they also have their own legislative assemblies. Similarly, legislative assembly was to be provided for Jammu and Kashmir as well. However, their elections have not taken place so far. The Parliament passed the Jammu Kashmir Reorganization Amendment Bill. Also, the Parliament passed the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Amendment Bill in the Lok Sabha that decided and finalized how many seats will there be in the Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. Vicky is asking me, can you give an idea about Article 370? Don't worry, once I come to the Supreme Court judgment, I will give you a brief idea about Article 370. So don't worry. I will first, let's just clarify quickly what happened at the parliament level. Then we'll go to what happened at the Supreme Court level. In the Supreme Court context, we'll discuss just a bit of brief about Article 370. So basically, what has happened? The parliament has now said that the number of seats in the Constituent Assembly have been increased from 83 to 90. So 83 seats in total that Jammu Kashmir area used to have. This number of seats have been increased now to 90. First, apart from this, the other thing that has happened here is the government of India in this law has also provided for reservation of various kinds. For example, they have talked about reservation for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, and also for other socially and educationally backward classes. Now, before this, as you know, before what happened in August 2019, Jammu and Kashmir had their own constitution. It was a unique case where a state had its own constitution within the country in India. In Jammu Kashmir constitution, there was no mention of OBC or socially and educationally backward classes. In fact, in the earlier constitution of Jammu and Kashmir, the phrase that was used was weak and underprivileged classes. So that weak and underprivileged classes phrase has now been changed to other backward classes, that is the OBC. Just like in other parts of India, we recognize certain castes as the OBC, other backward classes. In Jammu Kashmir also, the same wording has now been used by the parliament. Apart from this, some other interesting changes have taken place. For example, there will be certain reservation wherein people who have migrated from Pakistan occupied Kashmir to Indian side, they will also be given certain reservation. For example, the lieutenant governor of the state of Jammu and Kashmir or the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir will nominate two members from the Kashmiri migrant community. So, two members from the Kashmiri migrant community will be nominated. Out of these two, one has to be a woman. Out of these two, one should be a woman. Apart from this, there is one other change or one other reservation that has taken place. That is from the people who have shifted from Pakistan occupied Kashmir towards the Indian side. Now, please understand this. Before 1971 war between India and Pakistan, the border between the two sides, India and Pakistan, the border that we had at Pakistan occupied Kashmir, that border was not very strict. It was a kind of a translucent border. People could go from one side to the other side. So before 1971, there used to be a lot of migration of people from Pakistan occupied Kashmir coming towards this side. So, out of those people who have migrated from Pakistan occupied Kashmir towards the Indian side, out of those, also one person will be nominated by the Lieutenant Governor. So, again, in total, three people to be nominated by the Lieutenant Governor, two from the Kashmiri migrant community. Out of these two, one has to be a woman. Apart from this, from the people who migrated from Pakistan occupied Kashmir towards this side, one person will be nominated from there as well. The number of seats, as we discussed, have been increased from 83 to 90. There is a reservation for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes as well. So, in that sense, it's a very unique kind of a status that Jammu Kashmir Assembly has been given. Because in other assemblies across the country, you do not see such reservations of reservation of migrants, reservation of people coming into the state. But Jammu Kashmir, in that sense, has been given that reservation. Yes, Pulkit, including all the reserved seats, the total number of seats are 90 now. The reserved seats are not separate from that 90. All these seats together are 90. Within that, there is a reservation, SC/ST reservation, reservation of three seats from the side of the Lieutenant Governor, all of these together. Also, apart from this, you also have to understand the context in which all of it was done. Let's understand the idea of Article 370. Now, please understand this. Article 370 is something that you read in Indian polity. We read about Jammu Kashmir and the special status. Also, if you have to understand this Supreme Court judgment, in a lot more detail, I would suggest you to go to our YouTube channel. 3 days back, there was a video done by Sarmat sir there. It's a long session just discussing the details of the Supreme Court judgment, discussing the details of Article 370, discussing what did the Supreme Court say, what was the Supreme Court's verdict in favor of the government of India. Now, let's understand the idea. Again, I will not go into that brief because a lot more detailed video has already been made on YouTube, but we will discuss this so that you understand the idea behind it. What was the context of Article 370? Now, understand this. When India became independent, the British gave different options to different princely states in India. Mainly, the options given to princely states were you can either decide to be a part of Pakistan, you can decide to be a part of India, or you can decide to be independent as well. Out of all these princely states, the one state that was in a very unique position was Jammu and Kashmir. Why? If you look at the location of Jammu and Kashmir, the location of the princely state was as such that it could choose to be a part of India, it could choose to be a part of Pakistan also, and it could practically remain separate because it would not be inside India or Pakistan in that case. Kashmir was ruled at that time by Maharaja Hari Singh, who had a dream of having an independent kingdom only. So when India became independent, Maharaja Hari Singh of Jammu Kashmir did not join India or did not join Pakistan. He remained independent. While India respected his decision, Pakistan did not. Pakistan started sending their own intruders to attack Jammu and Kashmir, which led to the first India Pakistan War of 1948. When Pakistani intruders were attacking Jammu Kashmir, Maharaja Hari Singh's army was not able to fight against them. Under that situation, Maharaja Hari Singh signed the instrument of accession and accepted that Jammu Kashmir will be an integral part of India. Now, when all these negotiations were taking place, there was a unique article in our constitution called Article number 370 that was introduced. Now, what is Article 370? Basically, Article 370 was introduced to give a special status to Jammu and Kashmir. The government of India said that Jammu and Kashmir can become a part of India. We will not impose our own laws upon you. We will give you a lot of freedom. The idea was from Indian side, Indian government will only take care of three things in Jammu and Kashmir. Only three things. What are those three things? Defense, foreign policy, and communications. So basically, when Jammu and Kashmir became a part of India, the idea was that India will make policies and laws for Jammu and Kashmir only on these three things, that is, defense, foreign policy, and communication. For all the other things, please understand this. Apart from this, for all the other things, if the parliament makes a law for India, it will not be automatically applicable to Jammu Kashmir. It will not be automatically applicable. For example, if the parliament tomorrow makes a law, let's say Manrega scheme is passed, or the parliament makes a law that if you jump the traffic light, you have to pay a fine of 2000 rupees. Any law that the parliament makes, it will not be automatically implemented in Jammu Kashmir. It will only be implemented. The Jammu and Kashmir Assembly also says yes, and the President of India can give an order for that. So unless the President of India gives an order, special order to implement other laws to Jammu and Kashmir, those laws will not be implemented. Over the years, what had happened was, over the years, most of the laws passed by the parliament were made applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. One by different orders of the president, most of the laws of Indian parliament were actually made applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. In Article 370, the one important provision that you have to remember is Article 370, Section 3. Section 3 of Article 370 is the most important one. Why? What did this section say? Article 370, Section C said in simple terms that Article 370 can be removed by the order of the President of India. Remember this. Section 3 said that this Article 370 can be removed by President of India, but only if Jammu Kashmir Constituent Assembly, only if the Jammu Kashmir Constituent Assembly agrees. Okay, let me repeat. Article 370, Section 3. What does it say? It says that Article 370 can be abrogated by the President of India's order, but the condition is for that to happen, the Assembly of or the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir has to agree. Now, what is the problem here? The problem here is Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir now does not exist. Why? Because their job was to make the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir. When the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir was created, the assembly was dissolved. So there is no assembly, Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir right now. Just like in case of India's parliament, we don't have a Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly created the parliament, they created the constitution, their job was done, they were dissolved. Similarly, in Jammu and Kashmir also, when they created the state's constitution, after that, there was no need of the assembly, so the assembly was dissolved. Now comes a big question. Now, the question is now that there is no constituent assembly, what happens to Article 370? There are 2 points of view here. One point of view which the government says, the first point of view which the government says is, since there is no constituent assembly, then president alone can decide. This is the first point of view. That is the point of view that the government supports. Since there is no constituent assembly, the president alone will decide. That is how Article 370 was abrogated. Second point of view, which is opposite to it, that says since there is no constituent assembly, that means now Article 370 is permanent. That means Article 370 cannot be removed because there is no constituent assembly. So this entire debate is only about these two questions. The entire debate about Article 370, the question in the parliament was only about this. Could the president have alone taken this order, given this order to remove Article 370? Or was Article 370 permanent now because the Constituent Assembly of Kashmir does not exist? The Supreme Court here has taken the side of the government. They have said that what the president did was right. That is, the president could have now decided this. Now, what did the Supreme Court say? So, first thing, the Supreme Court said that Jammu and Kashmir cannot claim that they are sovereign within the country. Now, understand this. The first idea was petitioners who were fighting this case said that Jammu Kashmir never gave its complete sovereignty to India. The first argument in the Supreme Court was that Jammu and Kashmir has its own sovereignty. You cannot single handedly remove an article that forms a relationship between India and Jammu and Kashmir. That is the entire idea. For example, if there is an agreement that defines relationship between you and me, I alone cannot remove that agreement. That agreement can only be removed if both of us agree. The Supreme Court was asked whether Jammu and Kashmir can claim their own sovereignty. Supreme Court said no. As per the Supreme Court, once the state of Jammu and Kashmir, once Maharaja Hari Singh signed the instrument of accession, there was no question of sovereignty of Jammu Kashmir. It's an integral part of India. It cannot claim that they have, or they cannot claim that they have unique sovereignty of their own. Basically, as per the Supreme Court, we cannot have a shared sovereignty model. Within one single country, there can be only one sovereign, that is a central government. Second question, the Supreme Court, was Article 370 temporary or permanent? As per the Supreme Court, Article 370 was temporary. That was also a big question asked in the Supreme Court. The petitioners who were supporting Article 370 said that Article 370 is a permanent fixture in the Constitution. The Supreme Court said no. Article 370 is not a permanent fixture. It was only for the transition phase. It was only for a phase till the time that situation normalized in Jammu and Kashmir. Supreme Court said it should have been removed earlier as well, but it has been removed now. Third question about how the process was followed by the government. Supreme Court first said that Jammu Kashmir cannot claim sovereignty. Second thing Supreme Court said that Article 370 was never permanent. Third question the Supreme Court was the process followed by the government, that is asking the president to give an order, was that valid or not? Was it within the law that the president of India will give an order, and that is how the Article 370 can be abrogated? Supreme Court said yes. They have said that Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir still it does, just because it does not exist. Now let me first write it here. Basically, the reasoning given by the government was that Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir does not exist. So let's assume their role will be done by the Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. So first, Constituent Assembly does not exist, so their job will be done by the Legislative Assembly. Okay. Now, because in Jammu and Kashmir there was President's rule, because Jammu and Kashmir was going through President's rule, there was no Legislative Assembly. So the executive power of the state was in the hands of the President of India. Because of the President's rule in the state, the executive power was given in the hands of the President of India. And thus, the President of India was well within its rights to give this order. That is the excuse the government had used to abrogate Article 370, and the Supreme Court had accepted this reasoning. The Supreme Court of India has accepted this reasoning, under which the executive power of the state was in the hands of the president, because the state was going through a president's rule. State did not have its own assembly, and that is how the president of India could give this order. That is how the Supreme Court has justified what the government of India did, and that is how the government of India got this judgment in their favor in the Supreme Court. This is how the entire thing unlocked and revealed itself in the Supreme Court. Here's the practice question for you. Please answer this for me, and then I'll take up some of your doubts before we go ahead. Please read this question carefully. Your time has started now. Vivek, Jammu Kashmir is still a union territory only. The Supreme Court has said that it should go back to being a state, but they have not given a timeline for that. The government has also said that we will make it a state once again, but they have not given a timeline for that. It's still a union territory only. Dikshit, the 24 seats reserved for POK still exist. They are still reserved for POK area where elections do not happen. 57% of you got this one correct. The answer here is B. That is any two. Basically, the first and the third statements here are correct. The second statement is wrong because the number of seats have been increased from 83 to 90 effectively. They have been increased from 83 to 90, not from 80 to 93. The first and the third statements are correct. This is what we had discussed. The Correct answer thus will be any two. Okay. Before I go ahead, I see a lot of you have many questions on your mind. Let me take up a few of your questions before we go ahead. Again, I will remind you there is a much more detailed video done on YouTube on our channel by Sarmat sir. If you want to read this in more detail, the Supreme Court verdict, I would highly recommend you go and watch that video. That will be extremely helpful for you. Okay, let me take up a few questions. Rishika is saying one member should be from women. How from POK? Rishika, not from POK. People who have come from POK to India, those are the people they are talking about, not the people from POK. Sasi is saying, can you tell me 3 points of Supreme Court answer? Sasi, the first point of Supreme Court was Kashmir cannot claim sovereignty of its own. Second point that the Supreme Court said was Article 370 was always supposed to be temporary. Third point that they said was that the president was within its powers to give that order. Yes, Megha. Um, Anita is saying why POK is not counted in India but in the map. Because Anita, POK is not under our control. It's occupied by Pakistan. It's under Pakistani occupation. That is why it is called Pakistan occupied Kashmir, POK. Sham is saying what is the difference between states and UTs having a legislative assembly? So Sham is not the same. In a state, the state government has a lot more powers as compared to union territory with a legislative assembly. In a state, the chief minister has a lot more powers. They have full control about over the police and other areas as well. In case of union territories with legislative assembly, they don't have full control over themselves. A lot of their areas, services are still controlled by the central government only. Okay, Sabai saying, does this act violate federal structure of constitution because it decides the future of Jammu and Kashmir without their consent? So, Sabai, it's a tricky question to answer. Yes, the consent of Jammu and Kashmir was not taken, but again, there is a loophole that the government exploited. The loophole was again, whatever they did was as per the law. There was president rule in Jammu and Kashmir. Because there was president rule, there was no legislative assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. So the power, the executive power came in the hands of the president, and that is how the decision was taken. As simple as that. So I would not call it illegal, especially because the Supreme Court also has agreed to it. It maybe the fact is that they utilize a trick, but I won't call it illegal as such. Okay, I'll take one last question. Okay. Someone, I won't take the name because I don't want to put them in danger. Someone says that it is an unethical move. See, I'll tell you one thing. I'll suggest you one thing rather. Once the Supreme Court has given the order in someone's favor, I would suggest you not to use the words illegal or unethical about that in the exam. Please understand this. Whatever you think in your mind is absolutely fine. I have no problem with that. But the point is, once the Supreme Court gives a decision, you should not say that this is unethical or illegal, etc. Because again, just go by the flow, go by what the highest court in the country is saying. I'm not saying you should not think. You can think in whatever way that you want. But again, let's not use these words because see, the point is the exam that you are appearing for is an exam where you are expected to display highest levels of integrity. So even one single word that is misused can actually deter your chances of qualifying. So use your words very, very, very carefully. Okay. The next topic that we have is privilege committee and the ethics committee. Now, the idea is simple, and I'm sure all of you would have read in the news multiple times what is happening in the parliament with regards to the ethics committee. Just in case you are oblivious to what has happened, in case you're living under a rock and you don't know what has happened, let me give you a very quick background of what happened. We had a Lok Sabha member called Miss Mahua Moitra. There were allegations against her. The allegations were that she asked questions in the parliament during the question hour. As you know, the members of parliament can ask questions. The allegations were the questions that she asked in the question hour were asked in exchange of taking money from someone. So she took money from a businessman and she asked the questions that he wanted her to ask. Second allegation was that the members of parliament, how do they submit their questions? They have been given an ID and password to an online portal of the parliament where they can submit their questions, the starred, unstarred questions, etc. The allegations are that she shared this information, ID, and password with someone, with that businessman who was himself putting all these questions. So these were the allegations against her, that she took money in exchange for asking questions and she also shared sensitive information, ID, and password, etc. Because of which, what happened? There was an inquiry by the ethics committee. They suggested her removal, and she has been removed from the Lok Sabha. That is what the entire case is. Now, obviously, people in the opposition would not agree with that decision. Mahua Moitra herself said that she was not allowed to justify herself. She was not allowed to speak in the committee. She was not allowed to make her case, while the other people who are in the government supported this. Remember, this is not the first time that something like this has happened. We have had a history of such things happening, of members of parliament taking money in exchange for asking questions. Now, what was this case all about? Basically, the person who was in question here, who gave money to Miss Mahua Moitra, was from the Hira Nandani group. Now, if you live in Mumbai, especially, or in some bigger cities in Bangalore also, you might have heard the name Hira Nandani. Very big builder, huge real estate company. They have a lot of properties, big properties in Mumbai, especially. So basically, what happened was, it was the head of the Hiranandani group. He was the one who was giving gifts and money to Mahua Moitra, wanting her to ask questions that will show the Adani group in bad light, because Adani group is a competitor of the Hiranandani group. So they wanted Adani group to be seen in the bad light, and that is what the entire issue became. Now, from our examination point of view, we are not concerned about Mahua Moitra and her connections, who gave her the money, how much money, which designer bag she was given, etc., etc. We are not concerned with that. What we are concerned with from our examination, again, if you want to be concerned about that, you are free. I can't stop you. Search about that for gifts who are given. But from the examination point of view, that is not what we are after. From the examination point of view, our concern is the ethics committee. What does it do? What does the ethics committee have? What are the responsibilities that they take up? Now, the problem with the ethics committee is, the biggest problem that they have is, there is no definition of the word ethical conduct. Basically, what does the ethics committee do? The ethics committee will look into whether a member of parliament is behaving ethically or not. If they think a member of parliament is not behaving ethically, they can recommend certain action to be taken. The problem, however, is there is no definition of ethical conduct. What is ethical for you may not be ethical for someone else. What is ethical for someone else may not be ethical for you. So, how do you define ethical conduct is still a big question. Now, this committee exists in both houses of the parliament separately. We have an ethics committee in the Lok Sabha separately. It has 15 members. Then we have an ethics committee in the Rajya Sabha separately that has 10 members. These committees, just like the others, they have members for a 1 year term. Once the term comes to an end, the members change. Members in the Lok Sabha are appointed by the Lok Sabha Speaker. Members in the Rajya Sabha are appointed by the Rajya Sabha Chairperson. Again, as I said earlier, the big problem here is no clear definition of what is ethical conduct. Let's take a simple example. See, in some households, let's say in your household, if a woman goes out to work and comes back at 10 p.m. in the night, or if a woman in your house, a lady in your house, goes to party alone and comes back at 1 a.m., in some families it would be wrong. In other families, there is nothing wrong in that. So there is a difference of point of view. How do you perceive certain situations? Do you see that as, this is where the problem is. When you do not have one proper definition of one specific term, it will always be open to interpretation. And when things become open to interpretation, that is when the issue starts. Now, this ethics committee is not very old. In fact, it's as recent as 2015. It was only in 2015 that the Lok Sabha had this ethics committee as a permanent fixture. Before that, it used to be an ad hoc committee. I hope that all of you know the difference between ad hoc committee and standing committee. So there are two types of committees. Ad hoc means which are established for one specific purpose for some time. When that purpose is served, the committee is dissolved. On the other hand, standing committee would be something that is permanent, that will always exist whether they are investigating a certain case or not. So it became a permanent committee after only 2015, so very, very recent. The other question is, how are the complaints filed? Can you file a complaint to the ethics committee? Can I file a complaint in the ethics committee? No. Common people who are not members of parliament do not have access to this committee. Only the other members of parliament can go ahead and file a complaint. So you, me, common people cannot file a complaint. So in this case, who was the one who filed the complaint, by the way? In this case, who was the one who filed the complaint? In case of Mahua Moitra? Yes. Member of Parliament from the BJP, Nishikant Dubey. So Nishikant Dubey, who is a member of Parliament from the BJP, he filed the complaint. He got to know about all this information. He was the one who filed the complaint. So complaint has to be originated from the Lok Sabha member of Parliament. Anyone who wants to file a complaint, if you are a common person, not a Lok Sabha member, you cannot do that. Then what happens? After that, the Lok Sabha speaker will then see if the complaint has enough merit or not. If the Lok Sabha speaker thinks that yes, complaint is serious, the Lok Sabha speaker will ask the committee to undertake an inquiry. That is how the inquiry usually starts at the committee level. Now, please understand this. Any parliamentary committee, when they conduct an inquiry versus the judiciary conducting an inquiry or court conducting a case, it's very different. It's not the same. When a case is heard in, let's say, Supreme Court, High Courts, it's a very different process. They call on the evidence, witnesses, they have to follow the entire code of civil procedure. On the other hand, these committees don't follow all those rules and procedures. They don't have special investigators, they don't have special police, etc., to investigate the case. That is why there are question marks over such committees. The question marks about, can such committees actually be trusted? The reason being that these committees don't follow the same procedure that is followed at the judiciary level. What are they expected to follow? There is something called principles of natural justice. There is something called principles of natural justice. Have you heard of this? What are the principles of natural justice, by the way? What are these principles? Okay, Ravi. Let's see what these principles are. Okay. Right to be heard. Okay, got it. What else? Okay, Rohit. Right to be heard, number one. Second is, you cannot be a judge in your own case. If you are the accused, you cannot be the judge. What about third? What about the third one? First, you have the right to be heard. Second, you cannot be a judge in your own case. What about the third one? See, the third one is, yes, basically, whatever law or whatever case is going on against you, it has to be heard in an unbiased manner, in a rational manner. So, if you are given a punishment, there has to be a reason behind it. It cannot be irrational, it cannot be random, it has to be based on certain laws that have been established. For example, let's take a simple example. let's assume that if the case is that you have committed a robbery, okay, and the punishment for robbery as per the law is 5 years, you cannot be given a 10-year punishment then, just because they don't like you. So even if the crime is proven against you, you can only be given the punishment which is written as per the law. It has to be a rational decision. All these are principles of natural justice. However, as per the opposition and as per Ms. Mawa Moitra, these principles were not followed in case of this committee. She says that the committee never followed these principles, they never allowed her to be heard. She says that I was not even given a chance to explain myself, and that is why the opposition has been saying or has been consistently speaking against this decision. Now, this ethics committee again has not acted for the first time. Even these cases of MPs taking money in exchange of asking questions is not something new in India, unfortunately. We have had multiple cases like these in the past. We have had multiple Lok Sabha members, ISA members also being expelled. In 2005, we had this infamous cash for query scam. Again, these are some things that unfortunately have become a part of our democracy, where the members of parliament misuse this power to ask questions and take money and gifts, etc., in its return. Also, one more point here, many people criticize the ethics committee by saying that there was no requirement of it. Apart from the ethics committee, we also have something called the privilege committee. Now, privilege committee does something very similar. The idea of privilege committee is, if a member of parliament misuses their privilege, for example, you have the privilege to ask a question in the parliament, you misused your privilege by taking money in return, so that case usually has to be investigated by the privilege committee. Despite having a privilege committee already, we now have ethics committee as well. That is why many people think that ethics committee is just a duplication of efforts. Rather than having an ethics committee, we should have focused mostly on the privilege committee only. Even today, there is not much clarity about which cases exactly would the privilege committee take and which cases exactly would the ethics committee take in the parliament. It usually depends upon the presiding officer of the house, which case do they want to refer to which committee, and that is also where the confusion is. The Lok Sabha Ethics Committee, apart from investigating these cases, also gives advice and guidance to the members of how to conduct themselves. For example, they give them guidelines. If someone approaches you from outside to give you something, how should you actually react? How should you report such an incident? Such committees also take up investigations, and they also create a code of conduct for the members of parliament. They help the members of parliament in deciding how should their conduct be in conducting in the best possible ethical manner, so that there are no questions asked on their conduct, so that there are no questions asked on what their intentions are going forward. Here are some of the issues with the ethics committee which we had discussed earlier. The single biggest issue remains the fact that there is no proper definition of the word ethical conduct. What is ethical, what is not ethical, it can depend on the person. Secondly, ethics also change from time to time. Something that was seen as wrong 20 years back may not be seen as wrong right now. Something that seems wrong right now may not seem wrong after 20, 30 years. You can, for example, take the case of how people usually respond to the issue of homosexuality. If you go back 20, 30 years, very few people in India were supportive of the idea of homosexuality. Now many more people are supportive of this idea. After 20, 30 years, even more people will be supportive of this idea. Nothing has changed, just that with time people's thinking evolve. And this is again the issue with the ethics committee as well. They have to understand that the ethics also keep on changing from time to time. Also, the other issue is referring corruption cases to ethics committee instead of privilege committee. A lot of times the governments have been using such committees wherever they think that they have more representation, wherever the governments think that they have a better chance of having a report in favor of them. They usually give such cases to those committees only. This is also where the issue starts in case of such committees. This topic is mainly important for your mains exam point of view rather than from the prelims point of view. Here is a sample question to what you can actually expect from this topic. The Lok Sabha Ethics Committee was formed to serve as a moral compass, upholding the integrity of India's parliamentary democracy. In the light of the recent investigation by the Ethics Committee of a Member of Parliament, highlight the benefits and challenges associated with the Lok Sabha Ethics Committee. Before I go on with the third topic, let me quickly take up a few of the lot of questions that you're asking. Sabha is saying, why are two similar committees when they're performing almost the same job? Sabha, that is the question everyone has been asking. The government basically uses these committees wherever they think they have better representation amongst the members of parliament. They use such committees usually. Megha, no, it's not true that all questions from polity are from current affair topics only. That's not true. A lot of them are from current affair topics, but a lot of them are from static topics. Questions such as appointments of constitutional authorities, Supreme Court, Parliament, etc. Those are not all from current affairs always. Uh, then, okay, let me see if I can take out a few questions. Sushmit, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha decides the head of that committee. Vivek is saying, if we do not have well defined terms for ethics committee, see, Vivek, I'm not saying we have undefined terms for ethics committee. I'm saying in general, there is no clear definition of what is ethical, what is unethical. In general, something can be unethical for you and something can be ethical. The same thing can be ethical for me. Once you make a definition out of it, it becomes a law. Ethics are supposed to be something that are not defined properly. So the Anshu said, then how is it unbiased? So the Anshu, see, the idea is at the end of the day, you can never be 100% sure that everything is unbiased. You just have to be an optimistic and hope that it is unbiased. For example, let's take a simple example. Let's say that you vote for a member of parliament. Okay. The one that you voted for did not win the election. Someone else won the election. How is it a guarantee, or is there a guarantee that the person will work in your favor also? You might say that I did not vote for him, he'll not work in your favor. But that is where you have to be optimistic and hope that the person is unbiased. At the end of the day, the entire world is running on optimism. If you start thinking everyone will be biased, then there's no end to those problems. Kumkum, yes, the election commission and the amendment has to be studied. Not a lot of things have changed, just a few changes. You have to study that. Yes, Anjali, you can start with the Mahua Moitra case in the introduction because that is why it is in the news. Okay. Okay, Sushmit is saying difference between Kashmiri migrants and Pakistan occupied Kashmir refugees. So Sushmit, Kashmiri migrants, for example, would be people who at the time of partition came to Kashmir from the side of Pakistan. That will be Kashmiri migrants. Okay. And when you say Pakistan occupied Kashmir refugees means those who were in Pakistan occupied Kashmir and they migrated towards Indian side. Shiv, your questions are visible. Everyone's questions are visible. Considering people of that constituency do not represent anyone, then what is the way forward in that case? Varsha, unfortunately, if you are not satisfied with your member of parliament, there is no way forward except waiting for the next 5 years. Unfortunately, that is the case. Those who are asking me, can we mention Mahua Moitra's case in the introduction? Yes, you can. Why not? If it's a fact, you are not making it up. Okay, then. The third topic that we have here is about the legislative powers of the governor. Now, there have been always questions about the office of the governor, the appointment procedure, how the governor works, so on and so forth. Basically, if you look at how the office of the governor works, the issue in the case of governor usually arises in those states where the ruling party is not the same as the one ruling at the center. So, if at the center we have the BJP, the states that are ruled by the non BJP parties are mainly the ones where the issue starts. For example, in these cases, there are states such as Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Shivam, yes, I think so too. I think so too. So Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Punjab, these are the states where the governors have been a lot in the news. So basically, let's take a simple example. So what has happened in this case? And again, it's a long list. I'm just giving you three examples. In case of Tamil Nadu and Kerala, the governments say that they had given the bills, they passed the bills in the assembly, they gave the bills to the governor, and the governor did not take any action on the bill for 3 years. There are bills in the office of the governor of Tamil Nadu that are still stuck there for 3 years. No action has been taken. Now, what has this resulted in? This has resulted in a unique situation where the state government, let's say in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, they themselves have gone to Supreme Court against their own governor, saying that how can governor do this? Now, what has the Supreme Court said? As expected, Supreme Court has said that the governor should not do this. Governor should not just keep the bill with himself. In fact, just a couple of days back, Supreme Court said that the Tamil Nadu governor should meet the Tamil Nadu chief minister over a cup of tea. They should resolve their differences. We should not be coming in the middle of this because it's a matter that should be resolved. Now, basically, in simple terms, what has happened? The Supreme Court, in simple language, has said a few things. First thing the Supreme Court has said, the governor cannot just keep the bills with himself or herself. If the governor gets a bill from the state, either they have to sign on it or they have to send it to the president if they have the reason, but they cannot just use pocket veto. They cannot just keep the bill with themselves. The Supreme Court said, in case the governor is not happy with the bill, in case there is something in the law with which the governor is unhappy, then the governor should return the bill and tell the reason why is he or her or she unhappy. Means, in simple terms, in the language of Indian polity, the governor should not use pocket veto. They rather can use suspensive veto. They can use suspensive veto means they should send the bill back and clearly define, tell the state government what point are they unhappy about. Let the state government change it if they want to. Even if the bill does not get changed and the bill comes back to the governor once again, the governor must give the assent in the second occasion. That is what the Supreme Court has said. Number one, the governor cannot just keep the bill with themselves for an unlimited amount of time. Second, if the governor finds something wrong in the bill, they have to send it back to the assembly and clarify what issue do they have with the bill. Give the chance to the assembly to actually rectify that. Whatever the assembly thinks, they should send the bill back the second time, and the second time the governor should sign on it. That is what the Supreme Court has said. They have said that Article 200 of the Constitution of India that allows the governor the power to give assent, it should not be misused. The governor cannot just keep the bill with himself. In case of Tamil Nadu, as I said, there have been bills that have been kept by the governor for 3 years. No action has been taken. The Supreme Court says that this goes against the entire idea of representative democracy because people of the state have elected their own government and the government has the power to make laws. At the end of the day, if the government is not allowed to make laws, then how will the government actually function? The ultimate authority to reject or accept the bill is with the elected legislature. That is what the Supreme Court has said. It is the elected legislature that takes a final call on whether the bill will be becoming a law or not. The governor, from his or her own mind, cannot just randomly take the decision. That is what Article 200 is. Now, as you all know, and you have read in Indian polity, apart from giving assent to the bill and using the veto powers, the governor has one more option. The other option that the governor has is governor can recommend the bill to the president of India. I'm sure all of you know the governor can recommend the bill to the president of India as well. Now the question is, under what conditions can the governor give the bill to the president of India? Under what conditions can the governor give the bill to the president of India? There are certain conditions under which the governor can do that. For example, if the bill has certain provisions against the Constitution of India, if the bill is against the directive principle of the state policy, if the bill is against the larger interest of the country, if the bill is of grave national importance, and if the bill is about compulsory accusation of property. Remember this. Under this, under these conditions, please understand this, under these conditions, the governor may or may not send the bill to the president. It is a discretion of the governor. It is a discretion of the governor. Under these conditions, the governor may or may not send the bill to the president. However, there is one single scenario in which the governor must send the bill to the president of India. There is one scenario in which the governor must send the bill to the president of India. What is that scenario? If a bill is trying to endanger the position of the state high court, if a bill, a law of the state is trying to endanger or reduce the power of the state high court, then the bill must be sent to the president by the governor. This is the only compulsory situation under which the bill has to be sent to the president. Under all other situations that you see here, under all other situations that you see here, the governor may or may not send the bill to the president of India. Now, again, if the governor is not sending the bill to the president, can he act on his own discretion? If the governor wants to use pocket veto, if the governor just wants to keep the bill with himself, can he do that on his own discretion? Supreme Court says no. As per the Supreme Court of India, that should not be the case because it goes against the entire concept of representative democracy. However, in the current case in the Supreme Court, rather than forcing the governor, the Supreme Court has taken an approach which is very friendly. The Supreme Court has asked the Tamil Nadu governor to resolve the differences with the chief minister, to sit together as two intelligent individuals, decide what the issue is so that they don't have to interfere. So Supreme Court, rather than interfering, has tried to play the role of a peacemaker. They have tried to ask both the chief minister and the governor to sit together, hoping that the issue will be resolved. Now, it's needless to say that such issues, that is the bills pending and the bills not being passed, is a problematic thing for the entire governance. As per Tamil Nadu state government, a lot of important bills have been stuck at the governor's office. So it delays the policy making procedure. It reduces the confidence of the people in the government. People, anyways, have a very negative mindset about the politics and politicians in general. In general, people either are workers of a political party. If you are a neutral person, people usually want to stay away from politics because they think that the politics is usually not done in the correct manner, and these kind of things will only make this impression stronger in the minds of the people, and that is why it should not be the practice going forward. On that note, let's see if we can answer this question about the governor. Read this carefully and answer this question. Should I start your time? Okay. Your time starts now. Vishwajit, Article 200 talks about how the governor can behave when a bill is given to him. It says governor can give assent, governor can use suspensive veto, pocket veto, etc. 63% people got this one right. This is B. The question, it's a question that UPSC has already asked in the past. The question is about which of these are discretionary powers of the governor. Now again, discretionary powers means which of these circumstances allow the governor to work on his own rather than asking for advice from the chief minister. First, yes, the governor works on his own when he has to decide whether he has to send a report about the president rule. Second, no, while appointing the ministers, he has to take binding advice from the chief minister. Third, again, is true. When certain bills have to be sent reserved for the president of India, yes. Fourth, not true. The answer here is 1 and 3. B here is correct. Let me take up a few other questions before I go ahead. Pulkit is saying Tamil Nadu governor cannot understand Tamil. How will he talk to the CM on T? Pulkit, how do you think Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping talk? They talk over something, right? Then, by the way, it reminds me, I was very fascinated by the visit of North Korea leader or dictator, whatever you call him, to Russia. Did you see that? The man travels on a train, man, not on a not on a plane. He basically traveled on the train all the way to Russia. There was a special train for him because apparently he's afraid of flying. For a man afraid of flying, giving threats to the world about missile, it's just an irony, right? Very ironical. Anyways, Anjali saying discretionary power doesn't mean optional or not mandatory. Anjali, discretionary power means something that you can decide on your own without asking for anyone's advice. That is called discretionary power. For example, if I ask you what do you want to have for lunch or dinner, so you decide on your own discretion, but your mom will not ask you. They will just tell you, this is the food, go and eat. That's not discretionary power for you, right? Tina is saying every great man has a weakness. So, Tina, I'm not sure if you can call North Korean leader a great man, but I still take your point. Okay, okay, perfect. Let's go ahead then. Ravindra Babu is saying, apart from dictionary, is there any other word? You can Google it. Google will tell you a lot of synonyms. Maybe you can get a good word for discretionary. Okay. Mohammed is saying, do we need British era institution like governor who are totally controlled by the center? Mohammed, it's a trick question. Do we not have those governors right now? Do we not have those governors already right now? Not sure. Okay. Those who are asking why North Korea came to picture, don't worry. I digressed. I'm sorry. The topic is not about North Korea. The topic is not about dictators and people's love for dictators. I digressed. Let's come back to boring topics. Okay. So coming back, the next topic that we have is the idea of all India judicial service. Why is it in the news? It's in the news because the president of India talked about having serious thoughts about all India judicial service. Now, what exactly is this? Let's take a very simple idea. So, see, at the Supreme Court and the High Court level, The appointment of judges is sorted. It happens through the collegium. We all have read about that. President of India appoints the judges at the Supreme Court and the High Court level. They are recommended by the collegium. You might or might not like the collegium. That's a different matter altogether. We are not going into your likings right now. Let's keep that aside. The focus here is about the judges appointed at the district court level and the lower level. So basically, when you talk about district judges and sub district judges, they are appointed by the governor. Now, how are they appointed? So basically, if you have to become a judge, if you have to start your career as a judge, what option do you have? So people prepare for an exam which is called the PCSJ exam, or the PCS judicial exam, as you call it. So let's say you want to become a judge, you want to start your career as a judge. So you prepare for this PCSJ exam, you give this exam, then you start as a judge in the lower court. Then after a lot of practice and many years, you might get promoted to the district judge level. You have a interview at the high court will choose you, and you can become a district judge. Now, what is the problem with this system? The existing system of PCSJ exam and then your promotion as a district judge. The problem is it is dependent on the state. Now, the sad reality in India is whichever exam is dependent on the state, that exam has disappointed everyone. Take an example of so many states right now. Bihar PCS, earlier Odisha PCS, Chhattisgarh PCS, Rajasthan PCS, MP PCS. You have the exam of 2016 happening in 2019. The result comes in 2021. 2023, the appointment letter comes in, and it is your children who will get to see whether you get a job or not. So basically, all these delays of exam happening at such a slow speed, and that too when the exam comes in, you are never sure if the exam will happen or not. If any of you gave the last Bihar PCS exam, then you know what I'm talking about. On the day of the Bihar PCS exam, when the students are entering the center, there is a news that comes in: paper has been leaked, go home now. Paper has been leaked, go home. Now go home, and what do? No one tells you what to do then. They have to wait if the news will come out. Many people had started giving the exam, and then the news came out, of the paper has been leaked, now go home. So again, all these issues, again, I'm not saying that Bihar is the only state. Almost every single state has this issue. There was a big scandal in Assam PCS a few years back, that money was being paid to get a rank. And the sad reality is it happens in most of the states in PCS. So at the state exam, at the state level, the exam machinery has never worked well. So the idea is replace this with something called All India Judicial Service. The idea is simple. Just like the UPSC civil service exam that you are preparing for, just like that, why not let UPSC conduct an exam for district judges as well? Let's have an exam on the basis of the rank. They will be given different cadre. For example, you are given West Bengal cadre, Jharkhand cadre, Gujarat cadre, Karnataka cadre, so on and so forth, and you work, because UPSC has proven to be much more effective and efficient. The other point is not even about corruption. See, the other point that you have to understand: even if you begin your career at the district judge level, you will go ahead to become a high court judge, then maybe a Supreme Court judge also. So for that to be successful, the level of exam has to be the same in every state, right? But for example, let's say someone in Assam is able to clear the exam because the exam was easier. The same person, if they would have sat in the PCI judicial exam of Rajasthan, may not have cleared that. It is unfair for those who are from Rajasthan. So how will you make sure there is equal level, equal playing field? That's also a big challenge. So the idea is, why not have a central agency take up all these things? That's the idea of Indian Judicial Service. Now this idea is not new. It's something that has been talked about in the past as well, and it has not been implemented because of various issues. First big issue: no state government would want to give away its power. It can be the power of conducting exam also. Even that power no state government wants to give up. Because see, understand this, it's a way for the people sitting in the system to make a lot of money. Again, I will not give you any name, but trust me, I have been in some meetings where I have seen people negotiating how much money is will be charged if you want a top 100 rank in the UPPCS exam. I've been in such meetings where I've seen people talking that this is the amount of money that will be charged if you will get a top 100 rank. And then if you don't have that much money, give lesser money, you will get a top 300 rank. There are realities which are sad, which you don't want to believe in, but they actually do happen. And again, you can talk to people who have been in this industry for a long time. Everyone will tell you that yes, you cannot trust the entire process of the state exams. Again, I'm not saying it happens everywhere, but it does happen at the state level. It's a sad reality, but it does happen in a lot of these places. Now, whether it happens at the UPSC level or not, I'll tell you after your preparation years are over. But at least for now, let's hope it doesn't happen in the UPSC exam, right? Because otherwise, what's the purpose of you and me being here? Anyways, so the idea again, number one is, why has it not been implemented? The states have never agreed to it. Second, why it has not been implemented? Because of a lot of issues like the language barrier. See, if there is a person from Rajasthan, you are asking him or her to become a district judge, let's say in West Bengal, let's say in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, it will always be a language barrier. Now, you might say that what about the IAS? If you are joining the IAS exam, isn't the same problem going to occur? You will also have an issue going to a separate state, but understand the difference. When you are in the civil services, you get a lot more training depending upon your cadre. Also, the post where you will be, you will get a lot of helpers with you, where people will be ready to translate as well. But when you are going as a district judge, when you're going as a judge at a lower level, you will be hearing cases of day to day fighting amongst the people who will all be speaking in the local language, where you would have a problem. Also, for example, let's say you belong to Kerala. You know your issues in the state much better than an outsider. As a judge, you would be able to handle those issues much better. So the idea might seem to be more efficient. It might seem to be more efficient when it comes to appointment, but the practical working of it may be an issue, because of which this idea has not been implemented. Now, if it has to be implemented, what is the process? You all know. How is a new All India service created? Article 312 gives this power to the Rajya Sabha. The Rajya Sabha, by a two-third majority, can pass a resolution for establishing a new All India service. This All India service cannot include any post lower than the district judge under Article 236. So if you have to include judges lower than the district judge also in this exam, you have to change Article 236 of the Constitution as well. Now, again, this is just an idea that has been floated for a long time. Now it is finding support from the president as well. But again, this is not something that has been implemented or is anywhere near being implemented. The government has not shown any signs that they are ready to go ahead with this. The idea of why we need to have a change in the system is because the present system is clearly not working. Right now, we have about 5,400 vacant positions in the lower judiciary across the entire country. We have 2.78 crore cases pending in just the lower judiciary, which is also because of the pending cases. One other issue that we have, apart from vacancy, etc. See, we all talk about the corruption and all these issues in the judiciary. The problem is media also only focuses on Supreme Court and High Court. The reality is that at the lower judiciary level, below the high courts, there is still huge amounts of corruption. But it never comes to light. People never focus on it because big cases involving the government never go to lower judiciary. They only come to high court or the Supreme Court. So people focus there. People don't really focus on the problems that exist at the lower judiciary level. And maybe, just maybe, this All India Judicial Service would have an impact in a positive manner. But again, every idea looks good on paper. Demonetization looked very good on paper, but only when you implement it, then you get to see, oh, doesn't seem to be that good now, right? So again, these ideas look good on paper, but again, before you implement it, you have to think from all points of views before you actually put people through this entire idea. Right now, as I said, how are the judges recruited at the lower level? So you give this PCSJ exam conducted by the State Public Service Commission in your respective state. You start at the lower level, then you get promoted. If the high courts think that you are a good judge, you get promoted to the district judge level. There's an interview conducted by the high court. From that, then you had get a chance to become the high court judge, supreme court judge, etc. Remember, Supreme Court, High Court, their appointment is done by the President of India's order. Below that, District Court and Lower Court, their appointment is done by the order of the respective state governors. So do remember that difference. We discussed about the concerns of such an idea, the language concern, the concern of federal structure not being followed because the states think that their power will be infringed. There are issues about not understanding local laws, local language, local customs. Because, see, when people come to court, a lot of issues are very small, little issues that can be resolved just by people talking to each other. But what happens is, only when you understand the local issues as a judge would you be able to make an impact in that order. So it's better to have the local population as a judge rather than someone from the outsider, as per the critics of this idea. What is the way forward for this idea or any such idea? See, the way forward for any such idea is the same. Have consultation with the stakeholder, have all the pros and cons listed, have a very gradual change rather than a change overnight so that the people also know about it. Try to first understand how the existing structure can be improved. If there are scope of improving the existing structure, first go ahead with that. Way forward usually remains the same in all these kind of questions. Let's see. Answer this question and then we'll go ahead. Read this carefully. Done? Done? Should I give you the options? Okay, time has started. Four zero 40% got this right. This is actually C. Now there was a confusion about the second option I see. A lot of people, 40% people said A, 40% said C. Now about the C, about the second statement here. High Court of India, they also have the power to review their own judgment. In fact, this is something the Supreme Court has also said in the past. The Supreme Court has said in the past that even the high courts of the state have the same power of judicial review. They can also decide about the case if they think that it requires a review as compared to what the decision was given earlier. Also, if you look at how this judicial review power of the High Court is shaped, you can read Article 226, where you will see the High Courts also being given the power of judicial review. All right, then, before we go ahead, let me see if there are questions that we have. Vaishri saying, we many a times hear the candidates selected by UPSC are under center. and this leads to center state problems. So if AIJS also comes under UPSC, will that again be a reason for clashes? Which is, see, it's difficult to imagine that if this happens, this will be the problem. What you are saying, it may happen. I can't say that it will not happen. As long as you have center and the states under different government, there are always bound to be clashes. There are just reasons are different. Sometimes reasons are policy, sometimes reasons are governor, sometimes reasons are GST. The clashes are always bound to happen. So no one says that if this idea is implemented, the clashes will not happen. Purva is saying language barrier can be solved with the help of AI translator. Purva, the next person will say, the why do you need IAS officers? Let's replace them with AI translators. So let's keep this AI idea with ourselves. Let's not tell the government about it, because if the government comes to know, our jobs will be in danger, right? Okay. Then, but on a serious note, see, Purva, the point is at the local level, especially on a day to day basis, you cannot just apply all this technology, because again, verbal communication, how it happens, it's all very different. Um, Munna is saying in the first statement, context of retired judges is not given. I think context of retired judges is also required. No, Munna, context of retired judges, you can justify if you think that no, the first statement would have been incorrect, but no, when the question clearly says retired judges from the Supreme Court and they are being reappointed, it has to be Supreme Court only. You have to assume that part. Then Shyam is saying, is there another way, right? If the states requires the UPSC to conduct the exam for important positions, and UPSC make the exam for that set, why don't the states go through this way? Sham, because again, that is not applicable for judicial exam. Also, what you are saying is a provision on paper. The state PCS can ask the UPSC for their help to conduct the exam. But again, the state governments would not want to. No one would want to give away their power. Vivek is saying we may see AI faculties after a decade. Vivek, what is the guarantee that I am not an AI model? Maybe I am an AI model itself. Why to wait for a decade? What's the guarantee that the person in front of you is a person, not an AI model right now? Okay. On that note, the instruction has come in from the humans. Let's go ahead. The next topic that we have is the demand for special category status for the different states. This is basically in context of Bihar. So, what has happened? As you know, and we have discussed this earlier as well, Bihar recently conducted their caste based survey. This is a topic that we discussed earlier as well. The Bihar government wanted census to have caste based data. Central government denied that. So, Bihar within their own state conducted their own survey. They don't call it census, they call it the survey, because census can only be done by the central government. Now, after all these findings have come out, Bihar is now demanding that they should be given special category state status. They are saying that we should be called a special category state. Now, what is this idea all about? Basically, if you go back to 1960s, when the Fifth Finance Commission was established, in the 1960s, the Fifth Finance Commission of India came up with an idea of special category status for certain states. Basically, what did they say? They said that certain states in India require more help from the center government. Why? Because of their topography. They have a lot of mountains and forests, so they can't have a lot of industrial development. Because of their poverty, because of their population, so they said that certain states should be called special category states. The idea of these states would be they will get more help from the center government. For example, let's say when the government of India introduces a scheme, let's assume there is a central sponsored scheme. So when the government of India introduces a central sponsored scheme, usually what happens? The center government says we will give you 60% of the expenditure. The states will give 40% of the expenditure. The central government says whatever the entire expenditure is, we will give 40%, states should give their, we will get 60%, states should give their 40%. But for special category states, central government gives 90%, state only gives 10%. Not just this, apart from this, also the government gives more money in the form of tax devolution also to the special category states. That is why Bihar and other states also have demanded in the past that they also want this status. It's very much similar to reservation. It's similar to reservation. When you see reservation demands being made that we should also be in the OBC category or we should also be in the SC/ST category, it's very similar to that. Where a state demands that we should also get a special category status. Now, what is the center government saying? Center government says that the special category status now does not exist. Understand this. Government of India says special category status does not exist now. Why? The central government's idea is now we anyways give more money to all the states. There is no need to give you special funds. We anyways give you more money for all the schemes. So there is no point of having a separate category or special category states. Now it does not exist. Historically, as I said, it was introduced by the Fifth Finance Commission. They said that there are five parameters that will be taken into consideration. What are those five? Hilly terrain like Himachal Pradesh, northeastern states, low population density, economic backwardness, population, etc. It started with Jammu, Kashmir, Assam, and Nagaland getting the status, and then other states also like Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh also got this status. And again, the reason why the states want this status is they will get financial help out of it. They will get more devolution from the finance commission side. They will be getting more money for the government schemes as well. There are other development funds that are given to them. Central government's argument is that in the past few years, as per the finance commission, we are anyways giving you much more money. Like the last finance commission that we had, it increased central government's contribution to state government from 32 to 42%. This year also the finance commission recommended 41% tax collection should go to the state governments. So government of India is saying we are anyways giving you much more money. There is no requirement or there is no need to have a special category status now. Bihar is not the only state that have made such a demand. Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, they have also made such demands in the past. Now the question is, why is it that these states like Bihar are demanding the special category status, knowing well that the status now does not exist? If Bihar knows now that the status does not exist, why is it that they're still demanding it? This is where politics comes in. This is where the politics comes in. For example, the Bihar government can tell their people, see, the center government ruled by the BJP does not want to give us the money. We demanded everything, but they denied us. So you should not vote for the BJP. That's how politics works. So even if the Bihar government would know fully well that they will not get this status, but they will still demand it. Why? Because that's how the politics works. And it's not just with Bihar, with all the states, that is how the politics usually works. So the special category status again right now does not exist, but there are states that are still demanding it. Even today, the government of India does give extra funds for government schemes for Himalayan states, for northeastern states. The government of India still gives fund in the ratio of 90:10 for most of the government schemes for Himalayan states and the northeastern states. But the government does not want Bihar also to be included here. Aditya, Aditya is saying, what are the implications? Aditya, see, the biggest implication is when one state gets a status like this, others will also start demanding the same. So there will be no end to it. Then the government of India would also have to see, do they have enough funds to now focus on all these states excessively? All these are issues that will be implications of this. Chandrasekhar is saying, I'm not able to understand on what basis special category status is given. Chandrasekhar, special category status is usually given to those states which are very hilly areas, for example. So let's say in Nagaland, there's a lot of hilly areas. So the point is, in the hilly areas, you cannot have a lot of development. You cannot build industries, you cannot have manufacturing, you cannot set up offices. So the earning potential of those states reduces. So they need more help from the center government. That's the entire idea. Then Chandrajyoti Singh, Bihar is in Gangetic Plain. Why do they need extra fund? So Chandrajyoti, Bihar's argument is that in northern Bihar they have floods every single year, and in southern Bihar they have droughts every single year. So their agriculture is impacted. Bihar's per capita GDP is the lowest in the country. Per capita GDP of Bihar is only 54,000, which is the lowest in the country. Their per capita income is the lowest in the country. That is what their argument is. Next, we have another demand, not from a state, this time from a union territory. This time, we talk about the demand being made by Ladakh. Now, ever since Ladakh has been converted into a union territory, we have seen people from Ladakh demanding inclusion in the sixth schedule of the Indian Constitution. Now, the sixth schedule, as you know, talks about those areas which have, or schedule areas which have high scheduled tribe population. Sixth schedule talks about or has four states: Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya, and Mizoram. These are the four states mentioned in the sixth schedule of the Indian Constitution. These are the states which have a very, very considerable tribal population. They have been given a lot of freedom to make their own laws, to protect their own culture, to protect their own civilization. Ladakh also has been demanding the same for a long, long time. Ladakh's argument is, if you look at the areas of Ladakh, as per the last census, their population was about 2.74 lakh, and a majority of them are tribals. They have their own distinct culture, they have their own distinct language. They want that they should be allowed to preserve it by having their own local government. Now, usually, what happens when you are a part of the sixth schedule? Please understand. Let's assume this is Assam. Again, my drawing is very bad, as you can imagine. So let's assume this is Assam. Now, if Assam is in the sixth schedule, that does not mean that the entire state of Assam is sixth schedule. No. That means only these areas which have big tribal population, those are under sixth schedule. So, for example, if these are the areas 1, 2, 3 under the sixth schedule, what happens in these areas? In each of these areas, the government establishes a local government, which are called autonomous district councils. In each of these areas, we have autonomous district council, or the ADC. Now, autonomous district council, ADC, are like the local governments of 30 members, where people living in that area are able to vote. They make their own laws on a lot of issues, and they are given the freedom to protect their own culture, civilization. This is what Ladakh wants. Ladakh's argument is that 97% of their population is tribal. So if tribal population is the way to recognize a sixth schedule state, Ladakh says that we should be here. Now, what is the problem? The problem that the government has is similar to the last topic. If government agrees to give Ladakh this status, there will be demands from other places as well, like Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur. None of these are in the sixth schedule. Tomorrow they might also demand the same, and the government does not want to give away so much power. Understand this: the more power that you give away from the state governments, the more autonomy that you give away, the state governments obviously do not like it. Because, see, when you make such independent governments within a state, the state governments think that it is a compromise on their power. No state government would want to have a lot of these autonomous district councils. No state government would want to have a lot of these schedule areas. So state governments also do not like it, and the center government also do not want to give away such a power in case of such demands being made for the sixth schedule purpose. Now, the recent demands that have been made, the response from the side of the government is the government has created a committee under the Union Home Affairs Minister of State, that is Mr. Nityanand Rai. He works as a Minister of State in the Home Affairs Ministry. He has been made the head of the committee to discuss this demand with the political parties in Ladakh. So some political parties that have come up in Ladakh, they are demanding this. What the government usually does in such cases is, whenever there is such a demand, what the government will usually do, rather than the government actually accepting the demand, the government tries to find a loophole. The government, for example, says, let we will not give you this, but we will give you some freedom, we will give you some autonomy. The government will say, rather than saying that okay, we are bringing in the sixth schedule, let us try and find a new arrangement for you, so that no other state starts having the same kind of a demand. The advantage is that the six scheduled states get, as I said, they have their own autonomous district councils, kind of local city governments of 30 members elected by the people living there. They have been given legislative powers on certain areas to make laws, and the areas on which they can make laws, parliament or the state will not be allowed to make laws on those matter, so that there's no overlap as such. So there is no overlap whenever we have any power given to these six scheduled autonomous district councils to make a law. On those matters, the parliament and the state legislature will not make a law. They even have been given judicial powers in certain cases to solve tribal issues that they have amongst themselves. They have even been given the tax revenue collection power in certain cases. Only in certain cases, they can even collect taxes as well. Now, if you look at these issues or these features of how sixth schedule works, there are certain issues with this as well. There are issues such as, first, interference. See, on paper, it is easy to say we will give you this much power to collect taxes, we will give you that power. But the reality is, no state government wants to give away the power to collect taxes. There is always interference. They always complain that they are not given enough money. They always complain that the governors are interfering. They even complain that the district magistrate, the collectors are interfering. Autonomous district councils have been demanding their own say in the police appointment as well. See, just because they have autonomous district council doesn't mean that the police and the collector does not exist. These areas still have the collector, still have the police who work for the central and the state governments. So the issues of interference still exist. These states think, or these councils think, that they are not being given the free hand. They demand more money, more financial devolution, which the governments have not been accepting. This is why even the states that are already in the sixth schedule, they are also not happy about how the sixth schedule is being implemented. On the other hand, Ladakh wants inclusion in the sixth schedule going forward. This topic also is not important for the prelims exam. This topic is more relevant from the mains exam point of view going forward. Uh, Guys, we have two very short topics. Let's finish those, and then if I have a few minutes, then I'll take up your questions. Rather than asking the questions right now, let's quickly just wrap up the topics for now. These are short topics, and then we'll be done with. Okay. Now, the next topic that we have, the second last topic that we have, is Section 6A of the Citizenship Act. Now, what exactly is this? Basically, Citizenship Act of 1955 has been changed many times, as you know. One of the changes in the act was a new section, Section 6A, being introduced. Now, what is this section? Why is it in the news? It is in the news because the Supreme Court has asked the government, how did the benefits given to migrants impact the Assamese identity? What exactly is this? So, to understand this, I will take you back to 1980s. In the beginning of 1980s, there was a huge movement in Assam. The local population of Assam, especially the college students, were protesting, saying that a lot of outsiders have come into the state. They are coming in illegally from Bangladesh. We will not allow elections to happen in our state. We want all the outsiders to go away. It was a very violent movement. Many people were being killed. Anyone who was supporting the elections was killed. It was an extremely, extremely violent time. The result was in 1985, an agreement was signed called the Assam Accord. Now, the Assam Accord that was signed in 1985 was signed by the central government under Rajiv Gandhi, state government of Assam, and some local groups such as the Assam Gan Parishad, Assam Student Union, etc. Now, all these came together with this formula called the Assam Accord. Assam Accord had a lot of pointers about development of Assam, but the most important point that you have to remember was Government of India agreed anyone who came to Assam illegally will be thrown out. That was the entire idea. For that, a date was fixed. What date was fixed? The date was March of 25, 1971. The government of India agreed anyone who came to Assam illegally after this date, March 25, 1971, will be considered as an illegal migrant and would not be allowed to stay in Assam. This was written in the Citizenship Act. This was Section 6A. So, this is what the Section 6A is in simple terms. Section 6A of the Citizenship Act says anyone who illegally entered Assam after 25th of March 1971 would not be allowed to stay here. They would be called as illegal immigrants. Now, this was not the only date, there was one more date, 1st Jan 1966. Now, please understand the idea was anyone who came to Assam before 1 Jan 1966, you are fine, no problem. Anyone who came to Assam between 1st Jan 1966 and 25 March 1971, you will be given citizenship after 10 years. You will be given citizenship, but after 10 years only. For 10 years, you will not be able to vote. After 10 years, you will be given citizenship. You are proper citizens. Anyone who came to Assam illegally after 25th March 1971, you cannot stay in Assam. You would have to go back. This was written under Section 6A of the Citizenship Act. This is Section 6A of the Citizenship Act of 1955. Supreme Court has asked this question just recently, asking the government how has this section impacted the local Assamese? Means, has this negatively impacted people living in Assam already or not? Megha is saying deemed to be means, Megha, deemed to be means will be considered. Like if I say, if you score less than 40% marks in the exam, you will be deemed to have been failed. So deemed to be is just a fancy way of writing you will be considered. So deemed to be means you will be considered, you will be taken like this. That is what you mean by deemed to be. Now, this Section 6A of the Citizenship Act has obviously had a lot of negative impact in the minds of people living in Assam. People living in Assam have not really been happy about it. They think that allowing people to come in from outside have changed the demography of Assam. It has not left a lot of jobs for the local Assamese population. It has not left land for the Assamese population. They think that people coming in illegally from various parts, especially from Bangladesh, have resulted in declining growth of the people of Assam on a larger scale. They believe there has been a negative cultural impact as well of people coming in from different parts of Bangladesh, especially. In fact, there are states that have been impacted even more than Assam. States such as Tripura. If you look at Tripura, historically, Tripura has always been a tribal majority state. But now there has been so much outside influx in Tripura that tribals have now come in a minority in Tripura. So the problem of illegal migration coming in from outside has always been real in this part of the world. Let's answer this question. Read this carefully. Again, I will take up your topics once we are done with the last topic as well. Then I'll take up whatever question that you have. Read this carefully. Should I start the time? Okay, your time has started. 62% people got this right. This is again a question that the UPSC has asked in the past. The answer here is A. First, there is only one citizenship and one domicile in India, that is true. So, domicile is of a state. Let's say you have domicile of Assam or Bihar, you can only have domicile of one state. Second is not true. Any citizen can become head of a state. You don't have to be citizen by birth. Citizen by any means, you can become head of the state. Foreigner once granted citizenship cannot be deprived. No. If you are given citizenship of India, it can also be taken away if you did something against the constitution, if you acquired citizenship by submitting wrong documents, forged documents, etc. Citizenship can be taken away. So first is true, second and third are false. The correct answer here is A. Vishwajit, the second point is citizen by birth is not the only way to become a head of the state in India. In India, to become a president or MP or anyone, you just have to be a citizen. Citizenship of India can be by many ways. Citizenship by birth, by descent, by naturalization, citizenship by any other way is also good enough to make you eligible for head of the state. Citizen by birth only is not the only one. Pooja, domicile means the state where you live. Domicile means the state where you live. That is how it works. Stephen is saying there is no control of domicile in constitution, so first option is wrong. Stephen, not everything has to be in the constitution. There is a constitution and there are laws by the parliament. So don't think if something is not written in the constitution, it is not right. For example, the constitution does not say if you jump the red light, the challan is 500 rupees, but you still have to pay that challan. It's not because it's not written in the constitution. There's a law for it. Not everything has to be written in the constitution, right? All right, then the last topic, the short one, is the PM Vishwakarma scheme. It is in the news because the government says they have received over 21 lakh applications under this scheme. So basically, what exactly is this? The government is giving skill development opportunity to those people who are skilled laborers in 18 categories in total, including tailors, mason, carpenters, barbers, basket weavers, etc. It's a scheme which is central sector. Central sector means 100% funds from central government. Central sector scheme means central government will give 100% of the money. It's launched by Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise, so MSME Ministry. It is for a 5-year time period from 2023 financial year to 2027-28 financial year to incentivize people who are working in such field, to give them more training, to connect them to the market, to give them better tools, have better training, etc., so that they can sell their stuff in India also online, and they can sell their stuff outside India as well. Who are eligible? The rural urban artisans craftsmen across the country of 18 categories. These 18 include boat makers, armorers as well, blacksmith, all of these are included. The Goal of the government is by the end of 5 years, when the scheme comes to an end, they want to cover 30 lakh families. Please remember, 30 lakh families and not individuals. That is their idea, that they have to cover 30 lakh families in total for this scheme. They will also be given loan support at 5% rate of interest. They can get loan of 1 lakh rupees first of all, and then they will be given 2 lakh rupees of loan in the second branch. Apart from that, the government will be giving them a toolkit of 15,000 rupees to help them set up digital transactions. Government will also help them in upskilling, gaining better skills, kind of an internship program. During internship also, the government will pay them 500 rupees per day, so that they don't lose out on their earning, and they can upskill themselves, so that they can go ahead and take advantage of the market even better going forward. This is the last question for the day. Let's see if you can answer this quickly. Read this carefully. No, Mohammed, that statement is wrong. Any citizen can become head of the state in India is correct. Any citizen by birth only is wrong. You can be a citizen of India by naturalization, by descent. Even then, you can become a citizen of head of the state. Okay, your time here starts now. 57% people got this right. This is B. Second and third are correct. The first one is wrong. It's not just for rural, it's rural and urban artisans as well. Both rural as well as the urban artisans are covered here. It's not just the rural one. That is why the answer here has to be two are correct. Let me first show you the leaderboard quickly. It's right in front of you. A lot of people, 10 of you answered all the five questions correctly. Varsha, Ravi, Dipali, My UPSC Life, Adepu, Sudhanshu, Sridevi, Megha, Vanshika, and Pulkit. These are the people who answered five questions correctly. So good job. This brings us to the end of today's webinar. Quickly, there were a few questions about this webinar happening on a Friday. This is on a Friday because it was rescheduled. It was supposed to be on Tuesday. I was not well, so I could not take it. That's why it's rescheduled on Friday. You will still have webinars on Tuesdays and Thursdays only. So Friday webinar is an exception in this case. So don't worry. Chandrasekhar is saying, you mean state legislature is equal to UDC in Union Territory 6 scheduled areas? No, Chandrasekhar, in 6 scheduled areas like Assam, Assam has their own state legislature. But within Assam, there are some small areas, one or two districts, which are under 6 schedule. In those one or two districts, they have a special kind of a government thing, which is called the ADC. You can consider that as a state legislature in that area. Yes, Anjali, you have subject-wise webinars only now going forward. Bye, Sabha. Pulkit is saying, isn't it time for Supreme Court to fix the time limit for which the bill can be kept? See, again, Pulkit, I can't say what the Supreme Court has to do. Let the Supreme Court decide that. Mohammed is saying, what is concessional interest rate? Mohammed, concessional interest rate is simple. If the usual rate of interest from the bank is 10%, if the bank is giving you loan at 5%, it's a concession. So concessional interest rate means getting a loan at a lower rate of interest. Simple. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, one last question. Asif is saying, what is constitutional monism? Asif, constitutional monism simply means where the center government has much more powers than the state, just like in our federal system, where we have a single center of power at the center rather than the states also sharing power. Perfect. Ganesh, yes, you can attend the prelims test series offline as well on our classroom centers. Thank you so much for watching in. Again, reminding you the webinars are Tuesday, Thursdays. This was just an exception because we could not have it on Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope you learned a lot of new things today. All the very best. Do take part in the test series with all the tests. Don't skip any of that. Have a good day ahead. Bye bye. Jai Hind.